Grace to you and peace from our Lord and Savior Jesus the risen Christ. Amen. I'm gonna go two different ways today.
See that again?
Wow, that is great. Who was that?
That's little Owen, I think. That keeps
That's
us.
little Owen. All right.
It kind of keeps accidentally unmuting. Sorry.
All right, Owen's gonna entertain us here. A couple different ways. One is the need for us to wrestle. We need to wrestle with God. We just need to keep wrestling, and God is not Santa Claus. It's not a wrestling match so that you can get your wishes met. Although we do have wishes and desires, and we do have justice that we need to stand up for. So we need to go there. But also, we look at Jesus' parable about the need to keep praying always. Just keep doing that. And this unjust judge, doesn't that sound like right out of the headlines, huh? The unjust judge doesn't care about people, what their situation is, where they come from, who they are, whether they've got citizen status or not. Just go get out of my face. We won't listen to the details of anything. But eventually gives in to this woman in the text because she just keeps coming and pestering the heck out of him. And if this judge who just keeps getting pestered will finally relent, how much more will God do that? And do it quickly. And I think, what is quickly? Right? It takes years and years and years sometimes. So what does it mean? God will come surely very quickly once you continue this unrelenting call in your life. So we got some work cut out for us, and but I also want to talk about the judge and how so often we are the judge, and it's not what Jesus meant for us to be looking at. The point was to keep praying and just keep up the faith, whatever it is, no matter what you're going through, no matter how hopeless it seems. Number one, a woman can't even go into court in this day, so it's ridiculous that he even brings that parable. It's not possible. Women had no status to go to court, and somehow this woman is standing up for justice. So it starts preposterous and it ends preposterous, that we would grant it and not just have her thrown in prison or killed. But here we are nonetheless, and so we are sometimes the judge, the judge that cares not about people or respect for authority or the law. We don't see the people in front of us that are in need, that just keep coming. They just keep showing up. I thought a number of people had told me that the stretch limo was in an accident and won't be back. Well, what do you know? It was not in an accident, and it came back last week. It just keeps coming, and I'll have to confess, sometimes I have parked in back and tried to sneak in the front door before Colonel Bob finds me and then talks my ear off for an hour, making me late. And so there's something about hiding yourself from your own people that kind of indicts me there. But I'm kind of like the judge. I feel like, boy, no matter how much work we do with Colonel Bob, he's going to still be showing up with expired plates and plugging into this building's electricity so we can stay warm. It's a lost cause, right? That's pretty much a judgment on my part. I'm playing the judge there, and but I'll be danged if Colonel Bob doesn't just keep showing up with his Rastafarian outfit and asking if he can still pick from the garden. And I say, yes, go. And please don't come to Wednesday night dinner and interrupt everything. Right? Ever feel that? So, as the judge, sometimes we don't see each other in the needs we have. Sometimes we think that we're the most important and the only important thing. And we're the only one doing all the work. Do you ever feel that way? What in the world? I mean, geez, every chair in this room had to be moved back to where it belongs today. I was breaking into a sweat before I Got everybody show up. Only way you're going to fit 200 people in the sanctuary is to work magic with chairs, you know, and bring more chairs up. And not a soul of you came in hell. Not one. Not a single one. It's only me doing the work. And then Edie showed up, and I thought, dang it. Me and Edie are the only ones doing this. And Judy comes in with the bread. Dang it! Dang it. And it goes on and on like that. We can feel like we're the only thing, right? We just don't see each other sometimes. And so I just bring this to you. Getting to know my neighbor, 23 years ago. First moved to the neighborhood. And we've been cutting lots of trees down in our property, 36 of them to be exact. And the last 7 were there waiting to be cut. And I knew a couple neighbors, but they wanted nothing to do with helping me take those trees down. They thought I was nuts. And they said, we've been watching you. We're not touching those trees. And some of the trees were big, but not that tall. And so, all right, I've got to do it because they wanted way too much. We had no money to cut these trees down. And so I waited for Karen and Em to leave. And once they left and they got out of Lauderdale, they had an appointment someplace. I went and got a 40-foot ladder. And I raised it up as high as I could and I put it in the trees of the poplar trees. They were very tall. There's no way that I can cut this. It's February, by the way. It's frozen tundra. And I tied that 40-foot ladder, and it was a true 40-foot ladder when it was extended. So it was about 22 feet long when it was put together. I raised that thing up, I climbed up with a rope, and I tied that ladder to the tree next to the one I was going to cut. And these things are really tall, and the branches go up like that. And they're golf course trees. They're planted so they grow really fast to catch the golf balls to stay on the same, is it called a fairway or a green or whatever it is. So if you slice a ball, it hits the trees up in the air. So I went up there with my chainsaw after I made sure it was running in the cold, and I tied it to my belt, and it's hanging there. And I climb up that ladder, and I get to the top, and I thought, well, I should get as high up on the ladder as possible. So I climbed up to the top rung, you know where it says, when you get up there, it says, do not stand on this rung. And with an extension ladder, that's ridiculous because it's got to be like 4 rungs below that you stop. I'm on the top rung, but the ladder's tied to the tree. It's not going to go anywhere. So I wrap my arm around the tree and I start the saw. I'm holding on, and I decide that the best cut to make is as vertical as you can get, so that when it finally gets down through it, it'll slide down next to itself and go straight down. Because if it falls over, it's going to hit the house, it's going to hit the neighbor's house, and get hung up in the trees next to make a widowmaker. And I got to do it quick. Karen's going to be back with them. So I go all the way through that thing, and I get all the way to the bottom, and it goes through. And I was amazed, because that tree started going down. It was in slow motion, that tree came down. It was really slow. It was like you could go down and have lunch and come back. When you do stupid things, the world slows down. So you can really get a good look at the stupidity. And that tree started to slide down on itself exactly as I had planned, which is not always the way things turn out, but it was exactly as I planned. What could go wrong? And in the speed of that tree coming down, all the branches above it were fanned out. And it just raked over me, tore my coat, threw the saw out of my hand, and it hit the brake on the saw, thank goodness. So the chain was stopped as it started running, and I'm holding on for dear life to the tree next to it. And that tree comes sliding down, and it goes into the ground 2 feet deep, and it was frozen ground. Well, the time started to go the right speed again, and and I shut the saw off. But my hands were shaking from the adrenaline so much, and the tree was shaking, and I went down rung by rung, and I thought, oh my, I could have died. Could have been knocked out of the tree. My first thought was I should have tied myself to the tree. That would have been smarter. Yeah, right. That would be smarter. And I come down and I set the saw down and I back down the street just to see. I want to get a look at what I've got left. And as I back down this street, I'm looking up, and the tree that I have cut from the top is still 20 feet taller than the tree that remains. So there's 60 feet of tree that was above. These trees are 100 feet tall. And I'm standing there just shaking. I mean, shaking. And Jolt, who I've never met in my life, comes out of his house. He was outside of his house because he puts his arm around me. And if you don't know your neighbors, and you don't know the new person, I've got people on my block that if I did that, I'd probably get slugged. And I've known him for many years. This big guy from Hungary puts his arm around me because he's a giant. And he says, well, I've been watching you for a while. And he meant for months. And he says, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen you do. I'm still shaking. And I said, who are you? He says, I'm Jolt. I live right here. And you are. And I said, I'm David. And he says, okay. He says, I noticed your wife left a little while ago. And I would come to know him very dearly as somebody that would need a kitchen pass from time to time, he would say, so that he could come over and work with me at the fire pit and drink some of our work. And then Maria would call, aren't you coming home? Isn't it done yet? Yeah, we're almost done. And then he would go home. But then he says, how about this? He says, how about if you wait till spring and we rent a cherry picker together, and then we trim the trees that I have in my yard, which need trimming badly, and then we take down the rest of your poplar trees here, and then you can save your life. Right? But until then, we need to work together. I'll get some ropes, and he says, we'll work to get the rest of this tree cleaned up before your wife comes home. He was the judge. All of you would have been the judge. In retrospect, I'm the judge. What an idiot. Stay away from that guy. But we became best friends. And not only that, but he helped me restore my life and my sanity and my marriage by stepping out when he could have said, that guy is, and that's not the worst you've seen me do through the years, but we don't see each other. We just don't. And when we do from a distance, it's judgment. Most of the time it's judgment. Well, I could do better than that. Why did they take that garbage can out that way? Why did they box all the garbage out? Why did they sweep with that? Why did they put the grass clippings over there? Bernardo, if you're going to cut the grass, why don't you? There are reasons for why people do what they do. And sometimes we just need to be seen with compassion. It might not mean that we're going to get a new stretch limo for Colonel Bob, but we might be able to share a meal, and we might be able to hear something that might be able to help us all. So, although Jesus did not mean for it, I think it fits. It's not a stretch to see this judge doing this. In our political system today, of course, but just in our daily lives, we played that part. A lot more than we do the woman coming constantly for help. I've hardly ever asked for that much help. I ask once, maybe twice, then I'm just going to stay up all night and do it myself, and then help somebody else. Can we ask for help? Well, I could ask Joel for anything. Joel, could you help me put some plywood on my second floor when I build. Got a nice little lift, just crank it up and it cranks up a whole stack of sheets. Could you help me take it off? And by the time I got there, monster of a man, 320 pounds, rugby player from Hungary. By the time I got there at 2 o'clock when I said I wanted to start, he had thrown them up there single-handedly, like playing cards, on to the second floor. And he says, Dave, I got to go. Off he went. There aren't many people that will respond like that, nor should. We don't ask enough. Yeah. The other is I'm going to go as free as I can. I'm going to tell a story this Wednesday night over dinner that will elucidate this text. And it usually takes about 4 hours to tell the story. But I'm going to give you the 5-minute version here. Just to make the point, I'll leave all the details out. But I was at Isla School of Theology back in from 1990 to 1992. And I had to write a thesis for my master's. And it was on the role that Isla School of Theology played in the Indian Wars, and how it was almost single-handedly responsible for the murder at Sand Creek of 700 women and children, undefended. So they were writing their history, 100-year history in 92. 1892 is when they started, and I read the book for a history class, American Religious History, and there was not a single mention in that book about Island anything to do with Indians. And you cannot be in Denver, you can't be in Wyoming, you can't be in the West in 1892 without having some kind of a sense of the Indians around you, especially when ranchers are the ones who gave them the land for the seminary. And ranchers need land, and land is something that breaks up. You put fences up, and then you disrupt Indians from doing their hunting and their moving around. Just like we do in our, no joke, Winnebagos. We even name our motorhomes after Indians, our Winnebagos, Dodge Dakota. So I decided I would do for my master's thesis on justice and peace, I would dig up the history of how were we connected. Well, speed way ahead, I did discover that the president of the seminary at the time was a man by the name of Reverend Colonel Shivington, who led the massacre at Sand Creek. And he sat on the board as the president. And so I started to dig and dig and dig, and dug plenty up, and published my own addendum to the history book. And in the end, what was so stunning was there had to be something. There had to be something on the premises of Ilef that would prove that they were complicit in it. And it doesn't mean that, hey, just stick your nose in it, but just admit to, I mean, you're one of the foremost Methodist schools on peace and justice. Own up to it. Own up to it. Worse is the graduation at Isla School of Theology has always taken place downtown at the big Methodist church. And it was still taking place there. And Colonel Shivington served that church as its minister. And on the day they rode out to Sand Creek to massacre 700 women and children, and it was women and children, he took off his alb, his white alb, and his stole, and he got on his horse with his pageantry, and they went out and they massacred. And when they came back with the uterus skins from women stretched over the horns of their saddles and stretched over their hats, including Mr. Shivington, president of Isla School of Theology. When you hear that, it's atrocious. But what enrages you, at least enraged me at the time, as I was trying to make my case like the woman in the text, is they wouldn't own up to it. You've got it wrong. Even though I dig it up in Denver Post in their own words, with their own photographs. And so I kept pushing and pushing. And then I had a friend who used to be the librarian at the school library. And I met this woman who just worked there all the time. And she just happened to be working late one night. She said, I'll be the only one here. We actually have a restricted area of the library that's locked up under lock and key with a safe of historical books. And I could just leave the key around as I'm closing up. Well, I did. I went in and I found one of these books because they use those skins as book covers. They cover up the books as trinkets, history, and they still had this in their safe in the library. Thank goodness I borrowed a camera. You know, no phones in those days. You know, I borrowed a camera and I took pictures of that book. In that book cover. And the book was, you might think it was a Bible, right? It's even more appropriate. It was Western church history. It was a book on Western church history. Took the picture and then I published it along with the story for the addendum to the history book that was so nicely put together. That was in 1992. Well, I did not get my degree from Iliff School of Theology, to say it the least. They refused to let me have my degree. They came up with all kinds of technicalities, and personally I was thinking to myself, I don't care. I'm actually a Lutheran, and I'm going off to do my Lutheran year to become a pastor, I think. So I'm not that worried about it. But other people were worried about it, and they kept bringing my case up. So in that case, after all the years, it's been 33 years now, and my case has been constantly brought. Everybody knows Dave Greenland. I've just found this out. And 3 years after I left Iliff and was in San Francisco by then, for a few years by then, I came to find out that students protested every year and refused to go in to the graduation. And they held their own mock graduation in the parking lot outside of the church. And then eventually, after 5 years, there were so many people protesting that church because they wouldn't own up to it either. There were so many people protesting that they had to move it to a black AME Methodist church, where it is still today. What can your bringing it up before an unjust judge do for you? How can you keep persisting? All I know is that when I was doing it, with the threat of not getting a degree, with the threat of being kicked out, with the threat, I knew that it was justice. And it didn't matter because God came very fast to my side. Even though it appeared that I was losing, and would continue to lose for all these years. So I got an email in the box this morning. This is why I have to just tell you. And we'll have to share it on Wednesday night. Because it's a big piece of my history. And in the email box was George Tinker, the Osage Indian on faculty there, who's an old man now, and was my advisor. His wife says that they've been working for all these years, 3 decades, to make this change. And they're recognizing me. I got my degree. And they're going to put up a big statue in honor of the person that was massacred. And then return the skin to the Indian tribe that it belongs to so it can be buried. Isn't it profound? And they made a documentary. And interviewed me for the documentary a few years ago. I never heard more about it, but it came out. There's a documentary about it. And I think, do I do it so that things can be righted? I didn't even know that they'd been working all that time. I didn't know that there were people coming before the unjust judge for 3 decades. It wasn't me. I would have given up. But I got the ball rolling. I'm not even the hero of that story. It's every student that's refused to go in and graduate. And God does come fast. Comes right there in the fight. Comes right there in the fight. 80,000 people in Minneapolis yesterday. Downtown. 80,000. And I tell you, we marched a long ways. And by the time we got back to the beginning of the march, there were people that still had not even started marching. we didn't even catch the tail. The tail was too long. And that's just Minneapolis, St. Paul, 2,500 other sites. At Lauderdale, 2,000 people in Lauderdale, there had to be dozens of people at the dog park yesterday with signs. And as far as percentages go, pretty dang good. It's amazing. Is it going to make a bit of difference? Is that why we did it? I would like to say, yeah. Oh, no kidding. No, I want to be a part of it, but I'm not naive enough to think that that's it. It's going to take persistence. We don't even know where we're going from here. We just know that we need to keep showing up because it's about justice for everyone. We just keep going. And God is with us. If you were at a rally yesterday, you know it. And it's not just about a single cause. So I'm going to end with a poem really quickly, and then I think it's beautiful in honor of those that go before the unjust judges all the time. You might not be a member of the class or the group that's being singled out. There was a sign there. I'm actually going to leave with this because we've got communion. There was a sign there yesterday that said, first they came for the immigrants. And I did something about it because I know what the rest of the poem says. Isn't that great? Do you know what the rest of the poem is? It's like, first they came for the immigrants and I didn't speak up because I'm not an immigrant. Then they came for the Jews and I'm not a Jew, so I didn't speak up. But then they finally came for me. There's nobody else to stand up for me. But the sign says, they came for the immigrants and I did something. I spoke up because I know the rest of the poem. It's beautiful. Signs like that everywhere. It's just, that's America. That's you gotta read it. We're gonna be late, that's okay. You gotta read it. Listen, it's America. This is by Rosemary Tromer. America, I am your daughter. I have marched in your Main Street parades. In my yard, I fly your flag. I pledge allegiance and sing your anthem. My uncle and grandfather fought in your wars. My other grandfather came to your shores as a young boy and stayed to raise your power lines. I climb your mountains and work your soil and pick up trash on your highways. I love you, America. I vote in your polls and raise your children and volunteer in your schools. And because you are America, I pay your taxes and call my senators and protest in your streets. I read your poets, relearn your history, travel your back roads, and cheer your teams. You made me, America. And I pray for you, and I pray in the way I choose to pray because we can do that in America. America, did we forget our differences are what make us great? Remember, America, the dream. The wind is fierce today, and I love the way it inspires the flag to wave into life. Whatever is fierce around us is an invitation to show up. Whatever is difficult is a call to bring our best. Whatever is uncertain is a chance to be clearer in our thoughts, more generous in our speech. America, it's not a president that makes our country great, it's us. How we treat each other, how we meet our mistakes, how we become the wind that raises the flag, how our own hearts must be the home of the brave. And we keep showing up because we're called to do that. And if we're there for each other, God is with us immediately. All right.